Hello to you, I am Robotop, and today I want to please you with a new list of games are not demanding for weak and medium computers. For these games do not require iron and super fit quite weak computer with roughly the same characteristics that you now see on the screen. Before viewing, I want to say that to make such a video is very difficult, and your support is important to me. I did not allude to that, but I think you know what to do. Limbo, multi-platform video game developed by the Danish studio Playdead. The first version of Limbo was released for video game consoles, and later, due to unprecedented popularity, ported to most gaming platforms including the Android device. According to the technical characteristics of the game, is a 2D side-scroller, performed on the physics engine that allows full interaction with the surrounding objects. The plot revolves around a young boy who is looking for his sister falls into the magic world. Executed in monochrom colors and filled with a variety of traps. In general, gameplay is a method of trial and error. Due to the decision-making is not true, hero constantly die and have to start all over again. Game locations abound in electrical, mechanical, gravity traps, which in most cases is invisible, will not work. Limbo. The game has received numerous awards in the gaming festivals and exhibitions, as well as nominated for Game of the Year award. Bulletstorm. An ambitious thriller. Protagonist of the game, a former professional mercenary, and now a drunken space pirate, Grayson Hunt, robbing merchant ships in the Confederation of Cyborg-ish Sato. The player can pump your character and gain access to new weapons. Accumulate points which will be awarded for various methods of killing enemies. The unique way that you killed the enemy, and the more enemies you have killed at once, the more points you get. That will give you access to a huge arsenal of futuristic guns. In addition to guns, the hero is the ability to kick enemies, as well as to drag them into his or thrown in the air by using the energy of the whip. Singularity, a sci-fi first-person shooter, which tells about the grim Soviet reality. Action in Singularity begins in 2010, the US Air Force pilot Natrenko, sent to investigate the strange signals from a mysterious island that belonged to the Soviet Union. There he discovers Element 99, a secret weapon developed by Russia during the Cold War, and a device for time management, which allows him to make different kinds of manipulations. Shooter gameplay is built around the manipulation of time. For example, you can stop the timer in abandoned grenades at you. You can change the age of the opponents, thus they are at the moment turn into skeletons, or restore the building that had once been junk, etc. And everything is good for the main character, but the mystical waves of time Nate accidentally transferred back to the past. In the 1950s, he stands in the same place, but just 60 years earlier. The players have to fight not only with the creatures of the Singularity, with time ticks, strange mutants and other mutants, but also with people who are hunting for Element 99 technology. Saints Row 3, the third part of this parody of action in GTA style with plenty of story additions. The main characters of the game, the same as they were in the previous parts of the series, the gang Saints 3rd Street, which moved from a small town in Stillport, a huge metropolis, and it is trying to become the autocratic rulers. For the sake of the protagonist in the role of head of the Saints have to confront as a local criminal gangs and the official authorities of the city, to suppress the zombie virus. Suddenly broke loose in one of the areas of the city, and even destroy the elite US Army, which the White House sends for the elimination of Saints. Gameplay is Saints Row, the third has not changed, it is still a third-person shooter with open world, where players are free to do anything, to travel around the city, arrange warring families, or just to walk around the Stillporter. buying shops and trendy little things. To travel to the town on foot, and on a huge variety of fleet vehicles, which includes even tanks. Syndicate, a new part of the famous cyberpunk line about dismantling big and evil corporations in the not-too-distant future. Officially, the game is a rethought version of the game Syndicate of 1993. The game takes place in 2069, where the world is ruled by the so-called syndicates, huge transnational corporations. The main character by the name of Miles Kilo, Special Agent EuroCorp Corporation, performs a series of dangerous missions for their company. The game is a first-person shooter. The player can carry 2 weapons and grenades. Through biochip dart 6 inches, the player can scan, hack and receive intelligence directly in combat. There are 3 types of breaking the enemy: suicide, in which hacking victim commits suicide; undermining himself and nearby allies; suggestion, in which the enemy temporarily becomes an ally of the player; and overload, where enemy weapons for a few seconds goes down, stunning it and making it vulnerable to subsequent attacks. Resident Evil 6, continuation of the famous zombie series, was featuring many familiar characters. Action Resident Evil 6 takes place 10 years after the notorious events in Raccoon City. And once again the protagonists are people like Leon Kennedy, Chris Redfield, Ada Wong and others. The game takes place in the United States, China, and Eastern Europe. The game has 4 story campaign, each of which focuses on certain characters and tells a specific story. Gameplay reminiscent of the 5th part, instead of the classic. The game is very many enemies, and after his death they leave cartridges. Zombies and monsters in the 6th part can not only go for the character, and use weapons. Shadow Warrior, a remake of the eponymous classic 1997 shooter from 3D Realms. I do not remember the last time I ran with a katana, but there are jogging deliver incredible fun. Shadow Warrior, an excellent shooter, is practically devoid of drawbacks. Dynamic gameplay, crowds of enemies, interesting story and a beautiful picture. This game has everything you need and more, plus huge by today's standards a duration of 15 hours. Of course there are drawbacks, but you must admit, the perfect games come very rarely. I would recommend to all, without exception, buy this game. Believe that it is not demanding on the hardware. Darksiders II. Unlike the original game, the second part tells not about the adventures of war. The focus of the sequel completely different: horsemen of the apocalypse, death. Events of the second part takes place simultaneously with the events of the first part. Death tries to find a way to clear his brother's name, along the way encountering own monstrous past. Ryder will go through 4 different worlds, to face legions of different creatures, each of which wants him dead, and find answers to their questions. Compared with the first part of Darksiders II, more role-playing game than a slasher, the game is full tree inventory and skills has been added that allows you to choose your specialization. Death. The hero can use various types of weapons: hammers, swords or, for example, hand scythes, choosing weapons on the situation and your liking. Dead Space 3, continuation of the adventure of cosmic horror from a third party, which continues the story of the war engineer Isaac Clarke monster's necromorphomy. In the third part of the horror, Isaac Clarke gets on snowy, icy planet of Tau Volantis, where he had to wade through the icy desert, storm and blizzard. Dead Space 3 finishes the history of the series, bringing to the final all the stories, like Isaac, and the Necromorphs, and the Church Unitology I. Players will once again have to fight with the half-dead opponents, using not only technical equipment, but also the military sample that allow it to easily deal with horrible monsters. BioShock Infinite. This adventure first-person shooter, which the unfolding events long before the events of BioShock and BioShock 2, in 1912. The main hero of the game becomes a private detective Booker DeWitt, who hired an unknown person to rescue a girl named Elizabeth from the floating city called Columbia. Booker takes on the job, and going to heaven, where he and Elizabeth will be drawn into a devastating war between the city government and the rebel group Voice of the People. Gradually, step by step, Booker and Elizabeth closer to unlocking the dark secret that hovers over the city. Gameplay game reminiscent of the second part of the series, Booker is able to use special powers and firearms to confront numerous enemies. Besides, Booker can use a special sky hook that allows him to move on special rails sandwiched between the islands of the floating city. This spectacular fights out and fast, and their result depends only on dexterity of the player and the speed of its response. By the way, thanks to all who have finished watching the video until the end. Support the channel, like and subscribe to all. See you soon.